Hello. As the species coach, each individual group and the entire species has to realize at once the identity of negative value nature progression we're in. Not per theater. Also per recorded three identities of theater, as three bonded identities of volume that are distinct but non-distinct. For example, exactly the same way, in more than just how. The cell body, the cell wall, and the cell nucleus are bonded per observation with physical biology classes. For example, we have time treatments always too fast, too slow, originally as recorded actual proofs of what American history and what our founders really intended. You see, self-value worse than obfuscated because of a method that is a vertical and horizontal database relationship since before computers. And in relationship to what really revealed the ancient timeless languages like English, most probably ancient. Now, part of the evidences of this are recorded self-valued, criminally foreign influenced, evidence reception, criminal ceaseless natures of evidence reception, used in the furtherance of identity thefts, frauds, and worse than war crimes, simple organized human fact, cheap nature organized crime method that American history is about. It was about that breaching method using human fact, cheap nature. Speaking about the law as if it was positive value nature, as criminal and ceaseless nature, where the ancients knew. No, that is the one identity that is true as sequence actually, as its increasing value relevance to five bonded identities of sequence nature as positive, has simultaneously one identity, but it also distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously has the value and has the identity of five distinct but non-distinct, separable but inseparable, and with a gaining identity of volume, and with its gaining identity of relationship to itself, which also includes the value of those two identities of volume as value as nature / nature as value. Sequence true before the order of the finite in physics. Sequence true to come. That will be done, they say. And so many pray. Vaccines. The science is sharing identity. See, the ancients understood that and how. They followed the identity of volume we are, science. Individual grouped in together. Totally in relationship to this invisible but still discernible. The identity of the body of forever as a scientific value. Only the extent of it is debatable. And what debates it has to rely upon self-value. Self-value, this is identity science, so self-value is relevant. See, but this is also relevant to how all these value nature systems were applied for breaching a human fact treating nature, worse than torture. See, when they had torture, that really had both sides needing the World Trade Center attack, self-value roles. They had them already self-value roles, criminally foreign influence identity ground locations, with bonded, employed human fact treating nature leveraged against each location. Wherein as it counts, wherein as and how it counts. Wherein as and how we are human fact treating nature as value as nature, nature as value. And that's relevant because not just because of the five orders of value, because of how this identity, its identity of relationship to itself and the value of that are simultaneously increasing unceasingly in demonstration of how it is one identity of volumes, identity of relationship to itself that is self-generating as the body, as the identity of the body of forever, as an identity of volume. So response time, for example, was employed. All victim roles as shock and awe, no. With a vertical and horizontal database organized crime method that effectively kept and keeps intercampuses of each age and nature. Simultaneously, each database relationship has nothing to do with that discerned. That one has learned, because the only way it's discerned is where and as and how everyone discerns it through understanding their needs to value lie progressions. Lies that are breaching method employed, leveraged through other people's other apparent motivations, actual motivations that wouldn't be too, on a mass scale, especially like this is tied to what is actually recorded. See, we have people pretending to study what is going with the problems with areas as misprisioning identities, individually grouped and together employed. Originally and still for those lie progressions right back to all areas. This is intercampuses of each age and nature. This bonded a whole bunch of fact, cheap nature, organized crime. Roles, methods, needs, and natures. So we don't separate slavery. We don't separate subjects. We have to separate where and how we have to separate subjects. We don't leave out exceptions in exception nature. See, we have other being forced because they're forced to pretend passions and emotions. All the identities of the sciences. Each aging nature of campus. Each industry. Each private database relationships. Now this is where, with what also juxtaposed overt criminal enterprises. Because what it maintained /S, what it maintains, are all fact, cheap nature styles, fake sides of correlation nature's trinity. Where and as and how metaphysics has a trinity bonded onto it and as itself, as itself. Now, part of the way we could see this is how the extent of a complete identity of the perfect world's increasing identity of volume, and how it does. So we have this subverted by, forced, entertained, interbranch, in collusion with all opinions, all sciences, all influences in relation to the databases, further and further back to all ground locations between everyone. Having to hide that. So we have investigations and investigators used to hide criminally foreign influence lie progressions. Their roles with interbranch and foreign collusion there and here, fake sides, sickly distinctly. Because the nations are hurt, each one, modern nation and semi-ancient trap, hurt sickly distinctly. Effectively having to keep perpetually the real causes of negative value nature progressions, acts, and nature is blamed by other things other than themselves. Acts like predicate acts. Problems with the bugs. What happens if bats, they have a fungus on their all the bats die? You know how many bugs bats eat? What happens when, we're in an identity of negative value nature progression in this native system that demonstrates how to cause positive value nature progressions or negative value. Everything's in demonstration of its identity of its identity of relationship to itself, and as the value of that, simultaneously increasing. One identity of volume. The same way your identity of volume, your identity, is simultaneously, distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously your cell nucleuses, your cell bodies, and your cell walls. And it is simultaneously your complete identity over all that, its identity of relationship to itself, and the value of that, which is positive value, nature, progression, action, nature's evolution's fruits and gifts here, or it is force of space, nature, transfer, leads to Vadis. They have other takes on leads to Vadis. Because they have entertained simultaneously people speaking about history, people recording precedents, negative value nature. If it's not about correlation nature greater than itself. Justice, negative value nature. If it's not about, because we're not about correlation nature. This organized crime method is clear as day, simultaneously, overtly, and simultaneously, insidiously. It forced laws with pigment of the skin because of the nature of how internation sciences and original human relations, original scientific process was led by this. The ancients understood before the sciences were criminally foreign influenced. They couldn't fathom not understanding and valuing how individual, without this identity of volume and demonstration of this one shared. Whereas and how we are valued too. Its positive or negative relationship to itself. It is justice system. See, but we have modern justice systems as evidence, recorded, criminally foreign influence, hundreds of nations, A1 through Z, whatever. And in relationship to response time. Because this is where and how, again, there are with juxtaposed roles of fact, cheating nature, organized crime, with the ground. I'll gather round. This is the breaching method that divided colonists A through Z as Native Americans A through Z. You know, and them sickly denying what is native. See, there are proofs that the history of Native Americans was where and how the species together understood, and they came together before criminally foreign influence sciences. They were led by what the identity that actually they knew would cause positive value, nature, progressions, actions, that in natures, that which inventions are positive or negative, and they work or not in relationship to. If they are further positive or negative or not in relationship to it. So it is invisible but still discernible. It is evidence that people who want to deny, which they do through lifetimes, like for example, all things, this is connected to how, so we have people's opinions with the interbranch, with the overt criminal enterprises, with private, and with one worse than that, keeping all that, needed to blame other things other than themselves, correctly but wrongly, and defending that as defenses of fact, cheating nature styles, and convictions in relationship to pseudo-positive, and to overt and simultaneously insidious negative value nature, evil, pretending other, in collusion with what is the invisible but still discernible identity of breaching organized crime method that bonded everyone to roles, needs, and natures as criminal insidious natures, fake sides of correlation nature's trinity, bonded again with two identities of sequence nature and demonstration of what? Bonded with and as. So response time. For example, they have the employments as victims where the people that know, everyone knows that we have to keep our healthcare people safe. They leave it out, so they're not resuscitating people. So they're putting up big morgues, in like relationship to, it was, I believe, CNN reported about, they have big morgues. They have a Bellevue Hospital. I'm going to look it up on YouTube, and then I'll do another video about it, because this connects. That's in New York City. And I believe that was well before the Civil War. No, before, right in the beginning of this country, we weren't even free yet. From that was left entrenched. They're already putting in a transatlantic cable. So imagine putting a cable across the whole entire ocean. Now, see, this could have, that was in an identity of negative value nature progression, distinctly and non-distinctly, and simultaneously with where, in relationship to where and how we are, that we are in an identity of negative value nature progression now, and in relationship to this identity which has a differential relationship to the smallest identity of value progression, all active, grouped, and all together, from beyond it as two sequence / simultaneous natures, distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously, again, in the demonstration of the invisible but still discernible identity of value progression. That is the Trinity, per science, distinctly and non-distinctly and simultaneously, in relationship to the order of physics, distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously, in relationship to the order of metaphysics, and distinctly and non-distinctly and simultaneously, in relationship to the order of identity. The experts of the sciences were supposed to come together. For example, as noted in the beginning of the Old Testament. And they were supposed to demonstrate how the physical identity of the ground locations, experts, campuses, database relationships, private ones simultaneously, overt criminal enterprises simultaneously, the branches of government individually grouped and together, how they are recorded manifest, crime methods and natures as identity of value we are, and lie progressions from those spots, and standing lie progression cover-up natures, and styles of fact-cheaping nature that can't defend themselves and afford free speech and science true. So they have truths used and roles and facts used offensively for organized crime roles, readings of statutes originally still, sick, and cover-ups of that, where and how to. The people that tied to them needed to hide the same sequence shifts, finite, active, progressive lies together, identity thefts, frauds, and worse roles, lies. Not just lies, but in relation to that which is invisible but still discernible and as actually recorded. It is recorded by how this is fluent through hundreds of nations individually grouped and together, and with a breaching method on top of that, and all victim predator roles, even with the overt criminal enterprises as fake sides of correlation nature, maintained self-valued by the branches of government individually grouped and together, also maintaining self-value, therefore all undercover positions with them actually used to further them for other natures of organized crime that are completely fact-cheaping nature. They're in collusion with the courts recorded originally and still in collusion with human fact-cheaping nature, slavery crimes, identity thefts, frauds, racketeering crimes, worse than that, worse than racketeering, worse than war crimes. Identity simple, this, just extensive. Now, see how they're pretending not to realize it's simple by preventing mandated law, and pretending people have to sue where the courts are recorded, confessed, and demonstrated, and confirmed. They already used and use their locations to fabricate fake recorded things into databases, as their collusion not just with the other branches of government, not just with overt criminal enterprises, their actors individually grouped together, not just with other hundreds of nations at once, and all that they share, agreed. Those agreements conflict. Their roles with all counters are in collusion with just, all they're doing is keeping the identity of the ground, self-value, the identity of negative value nature progression. So, for example, we need to have we could bring reliefs to each modern nation acting as a species. We could make alcohol spread out where they grow the fruit. Connect all the different subjects, things we have to say, the long words of our species and the short words of our species. We're simultaneously overtly and simultaneously insidiously, and worse than that, prevented. But this is just how we're going to observe it. So we're going to not just observe subject, but this is why it is also critical to understand how and why the predicate is named the predicate with English, and the predicate act named the predicate act with the law. And identity. See, now, Fox Connecticut News, for example, they have male and female doctors of psychology, whatever, medicine too, because involved with uses of identity of the ground locations and legal identities and organized crime roles, with juxtaposed natures of organized crime acts and methods, bonded by this predicate acts delivery system method, /S. That was the breaching method that made all the /S is all the plurals of itself as liars of itself, keeping the real causes of its acts, of its method, of its finite, of its sequence shifts, of its finite active and progressive roles, with everything bad happening with each location. Caused by even this is in relationship to where no one causes it, but everyone's to the furtherance of it. Everyone, that is also where it's all caused by him, by it. It's to the furtherance of pretending to be against that too. So we have to have free speech liberated outside of campuses. Interbranch has been hiding with other nations how they kept and keep roles with crime methods using conspiracy theories. Because in interbranch they have been fabricating falsified transcripts, falsified video, falsified audio willfully because of their roles with child campuses. And all that is manifest in relationship to each age, nature, and stature of campus database relationships private, again, overt criminal enterprises. Really for the vertical and horizontal database, organized crime, method, collusion roles. Further, to keep that only fathomed by people understanding that they too late, they have to hide how they have been using all positions, including uses of investigations and investigators, to hide life progressions. To each spot of correlation nature they are recorded hurting, and forcing everyone to blame other things other than themselves. And how they are kept motivated, all those like prisons associated with murder crimes roles, with murderers, with the ones they punish them. They're also recorded pretending passions and emotions, pretending to be against what they are, misprising identities woven in collusion with and again with each age of campus, intercities connected through time. I went to a high-crest school in Wethersfield, Connecticut when I was a kid. They have people involved with identity thefts when people are in grammar school, attaching to fake conversations with little kids, because interbranch and foreign are kept needing to hide live aggressions and their roles with organized crime, acts and methods and cases, uses of the branches of government to conceal and further not legitimate agreed shared police sick, shared military sick, shared identities of law sick. It is recorded evidence clear as day how the lawyers were inclusion with and as identities of fact-cheaping nature, blaming other things other than themselves for the real causes of negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures associated with concepts like Jim Crow laws and with concepts like justice itself. See, I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a police force, I'm not a criminal. The sciences themselves are recorded evidence clear as day. Simultaneously, that's clear as day being obfuscated, but no one permitting free speech. Wethersfield police are involved with the uses of with people involved with the uses of the word the phrase /value /s response time, involved with their interstates crimes in and out of cases, and with justice systems and databases related. Simultaneously, private databases stewards and intercampuses stewards, database relationships, victim roles influenced to stack predicate acts roles, wrongdoing roles, sequence shift roles, identity thefts, frauds, and worse than war crimes roles. Simple method. And so you have to understand how Wethersfield Interbranch was doing this intercities before the World Trade Center attack. You have to understand how they interbranch fake branches before America won the Revolutionary War, the first one. I mean, you know, all wars are Revolutionary War. We would never won the revolution. Then you don't need war because you have the science being followed again. The one that causes evolution's fruits and gifts, means from nowhere. So we have the identities of the science of the nations as is, force entertained. Each one justifying that individually grouped together. There are hundreds of them that are using quantification. This is tied to them also with areas. In cases, criminally pretending to perceive, we have all offensive their perception, they're lying about it. That's evidence is originally still. Their delusions wrought simultaneously. So that's why you need to have them be able to follow the rules of the law. But they don't follow the rules. They've been fabricating interbranch with other nations, overt criminal enterprises, the witness protection program, involved with the predicate acts on my street, also then with the interbranch Facebook pages, Wethersfield Police Department's Facebook page, involved with them also with wire crimes. We're sending officers, forging names, switching names, falsifying police reports with them, with kids, criminal putting me and fake other people, fake words in quotes, fake on with an officer Mendez, with two officer Mendezes, intercities, involved also with people associated with a Scalora family, a DeMauro family, a Kerr family, and dozens of people from the Bridge Superior Court alone, but also with Hartford courts. People with the Del Fair family, also recorded, confessed, and demonstrated involved with criminally influenced uses of other families associated with the schools. So now they have the sense and sensibilities of everyone recorded criminally, valuing everyone forced to speak through other people. And when they're not, they're lying about their valuing roles with putting fake transcripts. WFSB and Fox Connecticut News recorded, confessed, and demonstrated roles, attaching me and little kids and their family members to fake locations, fake words, fake ties to other people, fake natures of ties to other people. Per recorded proofs of them, also predicate acts and cases, further recorded through already. That's why their motive. That's also relevant to and as their motivations recorded in relationship to their life progressions recorded through time relevant to their confessions made to me about Central Connecticut State University's roles with families and conversations and people associated with a former Mayor Gold and a Debbie Gold and a Lee Gold and a whole bunch of people associated with them, with Washington, D.C. and World Trade Center involved, predicate acts with kids, and with a proven principal child offenders campus that was then and now involved with other natures of organized crime. Acts on and off the campus is with kids then and now, and they were hiding this per the wire crime methods recorded that individually grouped in together, sickly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously, that the branches were our recorded crime methods having hidden hiding. Now this is also with the transition from ACA to RICO, and people with their careers and with their narratives of them, like from with all the police forms involved with the Wethersfield Police and with the Wethersfield interbranch families, on off the state judicial branch offices, on off the state prison offices, involved all along Route 3 that goes by there, involved with the Fianza family and others demonstrated involved with the houses there they forced to influence to roles with predicate acts, with evidences, and with databases crimes. This is database-oriented ground crimes, and with ground crimes, value/value progression crimes. They're again, not just crimes. There are also recorded interbranch criminal uses of the words crimes through criminal foreign influences and with delusions, again, where they are preventing mandated law. There are judges associated with physical delusions and crime methods, roles, and natures actually recorded associated with Fox Connecticut News and WFSB, for example. Intercity, that's in Hartford, Connecticut, right next to the north end of Hartford where there's Bellevue Square. This is where George Washington had to leave slavery right before the last battle of the Revolutionary War, where he had to leave slavery sickly, distinctly associated with Boston, Connecticut, and New York. And this is where and how the slavery of everyone was never discussed and was self-valued, hid, the more people spoke and were invested to formal fact treatment, convictions, and opinions, and roles sequence shifting to prevent logic that's not criminally foreign influence from free speech while they're pretending and having pretended fake recorded things. Now, so Fox Connecticut News has women doctors and their whole families, male and female doctors to have their whole families involved with triages, with the mental health people, and with medicine. They have people forcing medicine by forging names, switching names. Their roles with predicate acts on and off child campuses and on and off the colleges and universities, again with a whole bunch of other nations. Also tied to the roles with World Trade Center in Washington, D.C. A whole bunch of people associated with a Leahy family, a Dr. Dingleberry, a Dr. Dewberry, and other ones recorded, confessed, and demonstrated involved with organized crime acts and methods associated with the area around the Samuel Dix house, and also with them, and further with the camp. Those are people on and off campuses and locations next to the campuses involved with them, covering their life progressions and covering what the identities of the branches are actually inclusion with and as in relationship to each standing position of correlation nature. Tactically prevent the long words and the short words of our species, while everyone is vested to roles, keeping that blame on other things other than selves and that self-value. Time treatment's always too fast, too slow is used to get over on forever nature, which identity is in demonstration of itself with and as itself, beyond our control. is the answer slash S to our questions actually needed. So they need an invention before they just gonna write someone off. Okay, don't resuscitate them. Put something on their mouth and have the, because it's too messy. That's why they have completely sealed off faces, and we're filtered out. Better than the P95 mask. Cheaper and faster than that. Look how big it is. You can just do it right in the closing. Put plastic, put whatever you have to put inside of it. But do it, but right in clothes. Just make it to, you can just adapt it. It's people will absorb costs. People will help out. Like, people are sewing and things, but they're doing that, and they're just to keep self-value. That and how we could do such. Employed to what is leveraged, forced. Of course, they don't have the things on time. I've been telling you this for a long time. But you have physical delusions relevant to everyone, hundreds of nations at once with psychology, delusions raw. So there's a Bellevue Hospital. Hospitals throughout the country have psychology involved with so many natures of organized crime and medical corruption, fake mental diagnosis, them forging, switching names, their crimes with their patients and criminals. I don't have a good criminal record. I was put in jail with a harassment charge, where they fabricated where the judges and the police are recorded involved with wire crimes together. They've been involved with this since I was a kid. Intercities, various natures of courts are involved with predicate acts on off with the sense and sensibilities of the people associated with the campuses. Some of the parents, some of the stewards, and some of the interbranch with the parents of the interbranch and foreign in collusion, and with overt criminal enterprises in collusion. This is recorded how and why. We haven't connected what correlation nature has simple. Simultaneously inherent, active, and progressive means even beyond that. To discern means to discern. Please learn. So we have to move as a species and move as a species body. We have to break its prostrations. For example, and how it keeps everyone employed to roles pretending to be against such, like with uses of the word / value environment. Nature, its identity. Its identity of relationship to itself and the value of that. That's why it is simultaneous identity of relationship to positive and negative simultaneously. We'll examine the first part of the Old Testament and the Quran, how they are in relationship to that, how they demonstrate awareness of that, and how the stewards of human fact treatment nature, including of the religions themselves, the books themselves, worse than criminally incompetent, criminally foreign influenced, delusions wrought, preventing free speech, and preventing proper sequence nature treatments of beginning of the Old Testament and of the beginning of the Quran, while pretending to be other. Offensively, this is relevant per the shared victimhood to the vertical and horizontal database organized crime method. Horizontal, for example, with live aggressions tied to the database relationships, but then further and further to all identity ground locations.